Welcome to another episode of the Alignment Podcast. Stoked to have our guest Travis here with us today. Travis is a managing partner of Careers Launch, and we've been friends for a little bit now. So really excited to finally have you on the podcast. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me, Jacob. I'm glad. I know this is a couple of tries, but we got it down. I'm excited to talk about AI and technology and hiring today.
Yeah, and for reference, the couple of tries ended up where we got on the phone and just talked instead of ever hitting record. So that's how you know that's how going to be a good one. But yeah, to get started, Travis, maybe give us the elevator pitch of where you've been and where you're at and what you're most excited about for.
Yeah. Thank you. I would say for me, I always like to start on a personal note. It's a big thing in our industry is getting to know people, and we're dealing with people on all sides of the business, right? So for me, I'm based out of Minnesota here. I've got a wife and we've got 4 little kids, all under the age of 9. So we've got 3 boys and a little girl. Live in a very small town of 1,400 people. So we're just what we like to call small town Minnesota folk. And on the professional side, I come from a construction family. So I've always been interested in construction and manufacturing in those regards, and always thought that's what I was going to do. And my wife and I, after college, decided to move down to Arizona and was looking for a job and fell into recruiting, right? Worked for a big global recruiting company and kind of learned the ropes. But I got to essentially talk about construction and manufacturing every day, but I didn't necessarily have to go out and do the work. So I got the best of both worlds, in my opinion. Was there for about 8 years, and then COVID hit. And like most people, you decided working from home was a great thing. And hey, I can start my own company and do this myself. And so I started my own firm right around COVID time and ran that with an amazing business partner for about a couple years. And then had some things happen there and met Curtis at Careers Launch at the time, and he was essentially running the same exact business, just in a different segment. And so we could merge our companies with no big overlap. And so we had decided to merge our companies about 18 months ago. And I'll never forget that timing, because we signed with Curtis and Careers Launch and their team and merged our company over. And then I had my daughter the next day. So
Wow,
we'll always remember that date.
she's as old as the business relationship.
Exactly, right? How long you been doing it? And I'm like, well, how old is Annie? Okay, yep, there we go.
That's awesome. Do you love being back in Minnesota?
You know, we do. We really do. There's a lot of aspects of Arizona that we missed, being there for almost 10 years, and it's where we kind of started our marriage and had our first 2 kids there. But, when our son was 4 and we couldn't play catch in the backyard, we knew that was kind of a problem, right? And so coming to Minnesota, and we're here on the lake, so you can't really beat that in the Midwest. So the kids get all the seasons, and right now it's November, so they're looking forward to going skating on the lake and sledding and things like that. So it's been fun.
That's awesome. Has it snowed yet?
It has snowed, but none of it is stuck. So that's a good thing. It's definitely getting cold. I think it was 19 degrees this morning.
I talked with somebody in Chicago yesterday, and they had an inch and a half of snow on the ground.
Yeah, Chicago and then Michigan. Michigan had some snow that stuck, and then I saw that Kansas was like getting crushed. It's crazy.
That's wild. Yeah, we miss Minnesota. We miss it frequently, but that's awesome. Okay, so I'm curious so you've been doing this for a while. Over the last, I think you said 14 years, how has the space changed, especially in terms of technology and, the last couple years of AI? What's the same and what's different?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's changed so much. And also kind of the space that I play in has changed, not to sound transactional, but when I first started in recruiting, we were filling a lot of frontline production workers, right? So not a lot of skills that are needed, just more of, can you work the shift? Can you show up? Are you excited about, the dollar amount, right? And that's where people make jumps for a quarter versus thousands of dollars, right? So more of a transactional hire, but it was still relationship and trust based, right? I think that is very important. And when I first started, and I'm not even that old, but when I first started, it was phone calls and knocking on doors, right? I mean, we had technology, we didn't have to do the phone book and all that stuff, but it was still very much, hey, you can't fill that role, we'll make more phone calls, right? Like that was always the answer. you got really good at, and I think my baseball background definitely helped with that because in baseball, right, you fail 7 out of 10 times and you're one of the best. And same in cold calling, right? I mean, you're just used to rejection and not getting that. So that was kind of the start of it. And then now that we're in more of this executive space, it's very much relationship based and very trust based, right? Because not a company's not going to come to us and say, hey, can you fill my CFO position? They have some type of rapport with you, and or they know that you're the expert in that space, right? So it's not really that you can go out and, hear from recruiting companies and teams all the time that, hey, we can fill anything. And truly you can fill anything, right? Because recruiting is recruiting. But at the end of the day, if you're going to recruit a software engineer or a CFO, you got to understand how to interview those people and how to screen them appropriately instead of just saying, hey, I've done a ton of finance roles, but I've never done a leadership finance role, right? So if people start to understand the fact that you've done that in the past and you're the expert in that space, then I think that conversation becomes a little bit easier. But to really kind of answer your question, I would say that the one thing that stayed true is relationships. That has been key from the very beginning and really building your own brand, right? I mean, I always thought working for a $1 billion, multi-billion dollar company that our brand was huge, right? And I would work to build the brand and sell the brand. And then you leave that and you go and you start a 2-person company in little Avon, Minnesota, and you're still getting the same amount of callbacks, right? And I'm like, wow, that's crazy that my brand didn't really matter unless you've got a Nike swoosh or Amazon, right? I mean, you're just like the big companies that are out there. The brand really doesn't matter. It was people were buying from Travis, or the fact that they knew me and they believed in what my background was. So, the relationship piece is still huge in that sense. On the technology piece, that's changed exponentially. And I would say even since COVID until now, I mean, it's changed a ton, right? I mean, I think recruiting went from a bunch of sales calls and knocking on doors and industry events to this very digital world, right? Of even COVID happened too. And it went to, well, instead of phone calls, let's do a bunch of emails, let's do text messages, let's use LinkedIn and send all those messages. And I think everybody at the time loved it, right? Clients loved it because it's like an advanced caller ID, right? You can make sure and know exactly, should I answer this message from Jacob? Like, what's his background? I can look up, I can see all of this. Where if you do a cold call, I got to be on the ball and just kind of do it. So it worked out really well for a while for everybody. But then honestly, the market got really flooded with both candidate outreach and client outreach, right? It turned into this. Everybody was going to spam, or you're trying to send out, then create this search where back in the day it was how many phone calls can I make? And now it's, hey, I can create a search and send a message to 1,000 people in 30 seconds. And everybody's mind was blown, right? And so everybody was doing that. And so you're doing that to candidates, you're doing that to clients. Candidates are doing that applying for jobs, right? Because now you have a one-click apply and you start talking to candidates and they're like, what job is this for? Right? Because I just applied to 150 jobs yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. So, the technology piece was crazy. And I think everybody got really excited, myself included, right? The way our company was structured, we all got really excited. And you could kind of turn it down to a science of saying, hey, if I send out this many messages, I can net this many responses, and then I can net this many meetings. And if I want more, I just need to up my messages. And then over the last 18, 24 months, it's really kind of changed. We've seen the science that we had created and, the response rates and everything just kind of kept going down and down and down because it was so many generic messages that were out there. And so now we've really reverted back to, us personally have reverted back to in-person meetings, have reverted back to going to conferences, and we've reverted back to taking a minute, looking at Jacob's profile and physically typing that message. Even though we have AI and all these things, right? We're physically typing these messages and sending them out. And so now you're sending out, 100 messages and you're getting 20 responses instead of sending out 2,000 messages and getting 8 responses. And those were literally some of the stats that we've had with technology. So it's been this whirlwind of technology and change, I would say, in our industry. But one thing has stayed true. And one thing that I have always thought was really cool, I heard this from one of my sales trainings I did, is the sales guy came up and, the whole, hey, is recruiting going to die, or is is the job search going to die with AI, right? Because we can do AI interviews, we can do all this stuff now. And he said, he goes, what happened to movie theaters when Netflix came out, right? This was the question he asked. And we all kind of looked and we're like, I don't know. And he goes, all of their revenues doubled. And we're like, no way. Like there's no way. And he said, it's true. And the reason that it doubled is because guess what happened when Netflix came out? Now in movie theaters, you had reclining seats. You had food that you could eat in the theater. You had a beverage service, right? They turned it into a customer experience so that you still wanted to leave your home and go to the movie theaters. And he's like, it's the same exact thing here, that you have all this AI happening, right? And I literally have lived this. And you go to a very transactional model, like not that Netflix is transactional, but in this example, Netflix, right? In your home, you can get anything you want, you search it, whatever you need. And that's what you can do with AI. But really, you can still live and breathe with a very customer centric approach. And that's really what we live by and try to continue to grow, is those relationships and getting to know people, right? So very long answer to your question, but it's changed so much in that anyways.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think the cool thing there was what you're saying at the end is often we think, hey, we're going to replace something with technology. We're going to like scale and optimize and automate and do all these things. And I think there's a world where, there's a chunk of work that we want to get rid of. Like the manual, hey, the paper, if you think of the movie theater example, I can't remember the last time I went to the movie theater and bought a ticket from a human, right? You walk in and it's like, oh, great. Yeah, cool. I'm going to, I type in on the screen, it prints off the ticket. But then when I go and I'm getting my popcorn, they're like, hey, well, how much butter do you want? And so there's things where you can lean in on the humanity of it and create that experience. And I think that's in the balance of how much do we use technology to build the future that we want. I think the people who try to automate everything in their lives and their businesses ultimately will end up being less fulfilled versus intentionally seeing, okay, well, how does this impact the human experience, both of me, my employees, and my customers, and what can I do to double down on that and to make it a much more meaningful, fulfilling experience? Because I do think the most fulfilling things in life are relationships, and so the more that you can have meaningful interactions with relationships versus like wasting time, then it's gonna be even better and a better experience. I love that example of movie theaters.
Isn't that Thought that was interesting, right? And it's one that has stuck with me, and I've shared that quite a few times. But I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's every conference you go to and anything that's surrounded by AI is basically saying that, hey, AI is not here to replace you; it's here to make you more efficient and do more, right? Another cool one that I heard, because people are so worried about AI and who's in charge of this information, right? Like who gets to keep information, all this information we share. And somebody said, this guy who basically created a fully AI hotel, right? Everything from your experience at this hotel is AI. Is crazy. And he said, hopefully we think of AI as like big mother, right? Where we think of the government as big brother, right? Looking at you.
Interesting.
But he said, I hope AI is big mother, because what does your mom want for you? She wants you to be successful. She wants you to have all of the things that you need and is there to help support you, right? And that's kind of what AI is. I was like, that is great way to say that, because if we use it properly, I think it's something that's amazing. But yeah, it's, even people in our industry, right? And your industry is that if you're not using AI or technology, you're going to get lapped by the people that are, right? Because even if you don't use it for 100% of your tasks, even if I use it only for my admin tasks, I'm still going to be able to get so much more done in a day than somebody who's not using AI or technology, right? So it's in our business, especially, it's been a crazy whirlwind, honestly. And COVID kind of made us all get excited about behind the scenes. And even for me personally, right? Like now going to these conferences and going to these meetings for 8-10 years of making cold calls and like walking into businesses and having a pitch and what I'm going to say and conversation starters ready to go, was so good at that. And then you go three or 4 years of sitting behind a desk, right?
You
And
get
it's
rusty.
Yeah, I'm going to meet with Jacob, and great. So I'm going to do all my research on him. What are my questions I'm going to ask? I'm going to have these three things pulled up on my screens, and it's comfy, right? And then, man, you go to a few conferences and you're like, all right, what am I going to say to this person, right? What's an icebreaker where it's so, like you said, you kind of lose that aspect of it if you try to replace technology with everything. So it's a good compliment that we've seen.
Well, and I think it's going to, right? Like all the time people are like, oh, well, AI might not replace people, but it's going to give them superpowers. I'm of the opinion, AI is probably going to replace the bottom, not the people, but the tasks that the people do, where, if they thrive off of doing the paperwork, they're going to need to figure something else out. But it gives superpowers even more when you are intentional about how you're using it and you don't offload these deep thinking tasks and deep relation tasks, because then it's I mean, you walk into a high school today and how many kids are going to be personable and actually be able to have a good conversation with you and engage in certain ways. I mean, it's the same story, right? In the 90s it was TV is going to ruin us, and then it was, hey, the internet's going to ruin us, and hey, social media is going to ruin us, and now it's, hey, AI is going to ruin us. It's like, yeah, it's ruining a lot of people, and the people who can use it intentionally, it's sets them that much further apart from the crowd.
Yeah, yeah. One of the sad things I will say that I've personally seen is the candidate experience has been, I would say, impacted a ton by this in the sense of, companies are trying to use AI to help them get through applicants, right? And they're not using it in an efficient way, right? They're not using it to try to help them be better at what they do. They're using it to try to replace some of these menial tasks that they don't want to do, right? You and I both know in this industry, your people are your most important thing. And so if you're trying to just say, hey, we got 100 applicants, oh my gosh, let me use AI to just screen them out if they don't have these buzzwords in their resume, when you're not even getting to know the person behind the resume, right? So the candidates have really suffered because there's so many more applicants because AI has helped. And we've noticed the candidates are now trying to use these AI technologies to game their resume so that they can beat the company's AI algorithm, right? And so you
Yep.
have these battles going back and forth. And it's like, it's really kind of helped people like us that are trying to enhance this experience for candidates and or the culture at companies, right? Because we will take the time then to make sure and get to know the person and the resume. I mean, I can't tell you how many times there's been, where, oh my gosh, first glance at their resume, I would have hired that person, but they end up being candidate that they're going to hire because of the story and getting to know them. And so really this candidate piece, you hope that companies use AI to make sure and never ghost a candidate, right? To like give them feedback, give them updates, create a really good candidate experience.
But they don't.
They don't, right? To try to get rid of a few of these things. So we've seen a lot of that with technology being not helpful. But again, it's the way that people are not understanding it properly and implementing it properly that has been the biggest detriment. And then even candidates, you talk to people who, man, I haven't looked for a job in 20 years. Where do I go? Right. I mean, imagine being in the job market for the first time in 20 years today, right? It's like, okay, maybe I go to Indeed. Maybe I should probably go on LinkedIn or,
Yeah.
half of these places, they don't even allow you to drop off a resume anymore or to, email people. So how am I getting, and it's like, oh my gosh, I have to have a digital footprint and I have to have
Yeah.
you know, so it's this crazy time right now for people. So this candidate experience for us is huge, both on the candidate side and on the client side of like, in your line of work is making sure we're presenting a good culture. And then on the other side is like, hey, how do these candidates actually stand out from the crowd and go to these things and be efficient in whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it continues to evolve, and what things set apart success in all these different areas. But yeah, it's fun. Well, Travis, thank you so much for your time today. We should have you on again soon, because we could go on for a long time about some of these different topics. But if people want to follow along with what you're doing, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, thank you. I would say probably my LinkedIn. We talk about social media. That's the only bit of social media that I have on purpose. Follow me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, at careerslaunch.com, there's some good info on there of how you can get in touch with us, and always happy to have the conversation, whether it be on the candidate side, looking for work, trying to understand this crazy world that we're living in, and or on the client side, if you do need any support with hiring and or even just market information.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Travis. It was great to have you on.
Thanks so much, Jacob.